And speaking of fantasy, Dave Glockner joins us later to help set your fantasy playoff lineup. That's all right now on This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
All right. Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for week number 14. Can you believe it? Of This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports on YouTube. And it's great to have everybody here with me as we rumble through week number 14 in the National Football League. Please give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the station at JAKIB Sports on Twitter. All right. Well, look. The Philadelphia Eagles are the talk of the NFL. There's just no getting around it. They are clearly the best team in the NFL, and it's a long time since Eagle fans have been saying that. The 2017 team was obviously an outstanding team, but this team is just is fun to watch. They go from 330 rushing yards against Green Bay on Sunday Night Football 2 weeks ago to 330 passing yards Sunday against a Tennessee team, which was third in the NFL in rushing defense. So just flip the other switch, that's all. And the Eagles MVP candidate, Jalen Hurts, who I think now is clearly the favorite to win that, just had a heck of a game against the Tennessee Titans. And as everybody predicted, A.J. Brown came up with a terrific game, 2 touchdowns, 119 yards. Brown was outstanding for Philadelphia, but Hurts is the story as the Eagles continue to just lay waste to almost everybody they play on that NFL schedule. This week, it's the New York Football Giants, the first of 2. The Eagles will play the Giants the last week of the season. I suspect that game really won't mean much at all to Philadelphia because I think they're going to have the home field clinched by that time. It sure means a hell of a lot to the New York Giants, though, who are coming into this game having won just one of their last 5, and that one was against the Houston Texans. As the schedule has ramped up and people have caught on to the Giants, they just, in my opinion, do not have the offensive firepower to stay with teams, certainly not with Philadelphia. We'll be talking with Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News, joining us. Sal Powell is away tonight, so it'll be Pat Leonard joining us from the New York Daily News. We've got Dave Glockner joining me at the bottom of the hour to talk about fantasy. And Sean Green will join us to talk about some props and some picks. And then we wrap it all up with the old warhorse Gary Myers to talk about the rubble. As I said, that is teams that habitually are at the top of the heap in the National Football League, that being Los Angeles, the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions, the inexplicable Denver Broncos, who are simply horrible. I mean, horrible is the word to describe the Denver Broncos. And those enigmatic Green Bay Packers, who usually play well. They play hard every week. But what has happened in Green Bay? So we'll be talking about all that with Gary as we talk about this NFL schedule for this week. And Xander, how about we bring up Vince Lombardi here to join me, talk about what the hell is going on out there. Well, it's 1960 all over again, because that's the last time a Philadelphia Eagle was named MVP. It's been so long since an Eagle was named MVP that in 1961, the league affiliated with the Associated Press to actually call it the Associated Press NFL MVP. No Eagle has won it since that partnership took place in 1961. Norm Van Brocklin, the last Eagle to win it, when Van Brocklin led the 1960 Eagles to that win over Green Bay at Franklin Field. So Jalen Hurts, I mean, barring some catastrophic event, which we certainly do not want to happen, Hurts is going to win the MVP, and he deserves it. He is playing head and shoulders above almost every quarterback in the league right now. Hurts, if you look at some of these stats that this guy is generating, a 917 win percentage. He's obviously first in the league in that. Passing touchdowns to interceptions, 20-3, first in the league in that. Rushing touchdowns, 9, first in the league in that. Quarterback rating, 108, third in the league. And yards per attempt, 8.24. He is second in the league in that. So Hurts' resume this season. Absolutely sterling. And it's his to lose MVP. Talked about the rubble. I've mentioned that. We'll get with Gary on that later on, but it is really something to see. Some marquee teams have really fallen off, and I think it's a little dampening for the league. I mean, let's face it. This is a league that basically reacts to the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers and whoever the defending Super Bowl champion is. And so many times that late game on Sunday is the Denver Broncos, but all they're doing right now is they're just getting knocked off of whatever primetime game the leagues can get rid of them because they're just not playing good football. And we'll talk with Gary later about maybe why that is. And one thing these teams have in common, old quarterbacks, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, and, of course, Russell Wilson. And it's maybe they just got old altogether in 1 year or so. Some big divisional matchups this week besides Philadelphia and the Giants. The New York Jets travel to Buffalo. It's hard to believe that that's a big divisional matchup, but Buffalo is not playing great football. The Jets are fighting every single week. So even though the Buffalo's a big favorite, 9 points, we'll see if the Jets and Mike White can give them a battle up there. Pittsburgh visiting Baltimore, always a tough game. How the Baltimore Ravens are doing it is really amazing to see. Their offense is about as good as Denver's. And yet there they are sitting on top of the AFC Northern Division. The Ravens playing very well, at least in that regard, with an 8-4 record. So Pittsburgh's coming on. Steelers playing a little bit better right now with that rookie quarterback. And the losing teams find a way. Boy, don't they always. I have been talking about this forever on my radio show, and now I'm bringing it up again because those of you who watched the Monday night game, New Orleans visiting Tampa Bay, weren't just struck by it, and you just knew it was coming. New Orleans up 16-3. They spent way too much time kicking field goals, including some very short field goals by Will Lutz. A couple times they were inside the 5. And why the Saints have semi-retired Alvin Kamara is beyond me. But on a 2nd and 9 play, 5 minutes to go, the Saints have Kamara sitting on the bench. They throw a pass to Mark Ingram, who clearly injured his knee during that series. Ingram inexplicably runs out of bounds 1 yard short of the stick. He easily could have gotten the first, which could have cemented the game for the Saints. Lo and behold, he goes out of bounds. 3rd and 1, they call a stupid pass play instead of, again, using 41. End up punting, and here comes Tommy B. Tommy B takes off the Clark Kent outfit, puts on the cape, and here he comes down the field. All of a sudden, it's 16-10. And then the Saints, this is what I mean by losing teams lose. You know how we always scream all the time how teams get too conservative? The Saints have a 3rd and 17 after a sack of Andy Dalton, and they throw the ball. Now, that is inexplicable. Again, don't throw the ball. Just either run it or throw a safe, flat pass. Dalton throws a beautiful pass, but Taysom Hill is rocked as soon as he tries to catch it. Incomplete pass. Clock stops. Ball goes back to Tom Brady, and guess what happens? You'll never believe. Final score 17-16 Tampa. It's just excruciating how teams that all of a sudden get comfortable with losing will create a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's what the Saints did on Monday night. All right, Xander, thanks very much. How about we bring up the standings here now? We talk about where everything stands as of Week 13 in the National Football League. Obviously, you can see we talked about Philadelphia sitting there nice and pretty at 11-1. We haven't talked much on this show about those Dallas Cowboys. Dallas now sitting at 9-3, and they appear to be clearly the second best team now in the NFC. You talk about tank jobs. I'm going to talk about this a little bit with Sean Green when he joins me. The Indianapolis Colts gave up 33 points in the 4th quarter against the Cowboys. 33. And only one of those was a defensive touchdown. So I don't know what's going on. The Jeff Saturday era of good feeling is over in Indianapolis, and the Colts just totally tanked it in that 4th quarter. But anyway, Dallas looking very good. NFC South is terrible. The NFC North, how about the Minnesota Vikings at 10-2, a 2.5-point underdog at 5-7 Detroit. That's what odds makers think of the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk to Sean about that also. In the NFC West, I think it's San Francisco, even though now Jimmy G out for most of the season. He does not have a broken foot, so he may be back by the end of the season. That's very doubtful. We'll see if Mr. Purdy can lead the 49ers to the playoffs. I think they will make it. Seattle's still playing well. In the AFC, talked about Buffalo is wobbling a little bit. Miami right on their heels at 8-4. Miami losing to San Francisco last week. The AFC South is as good as the NFC South. I mentioned the Ravens at 8-4. The Bengals are right behind them. Bengals are a better team than Baltimore. 5 times better in offense. It's going to be very hard for the Ravens to hold on. Lamar Jackson's going to be out for, I'm sure, a couple of weeks. And in the West, it's the Chiefs. They're already 3 games ahead of the Chargers. So it looks like Kansas City will coast probably end up with the number 1 seed. So we'll see. Now it's Kansas City and Buffalo dead even now. We'll see who ends up with that 1 seed. Those two are clearly heading for, I think, a rematch in the AFC title game. A couple more words on this Eagles-Giants I thought was interesting. The all-time series, the Eagles lead it 89-87-2. That's regular season and postseason. So here these teams have played all these times. Let me see if I got that math right. 178 times, and there's only a 2-game spread between these two teams that have basically had rough histories for a number of years, but they're that close. But the fascinating thing is when you just take the regular season, which is the Eagles, and they've played 4 times in the postseason, the Eagles and Giants, and split 2-2. You subtract them out of all those games, the Eagles and Giants have scored the exact same number of points in the 170 or so regular season games that they've played. Each team has scored 3,346 points. That's amazing. But that just goes to show you how close this rivalry has been. I don't think emotionally this rivalry is nearly as big in Philadelphia as Eagles-Cowboys. But the Giants still can be a tough opponent. Good defense. The Eagles are going to have to be, I think, on their game. Philadelphia not looking at a trap game yet. The Eagles go to Chicago next week. That will be a trap game with the Christmas Eve game looming down in Jerry World. But for this week, it's the Giants. And as I mentioned, Pat Leonard's going to be joining me, and we're going to talk about some late-breaking news about Saquon Barkley. Hopefully, Pat can fill us in about that. And we'll talk about how the Giants offense could possibly keep up with this Eagles offense. We'll get some dialogue on with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News when we come back here on This Week in Pro Football.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles!
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
Cantor, Novak, Beaver & Pike is a full-service CPA firm with offices in PA and New Jersey, offering first-rate accounting, audit, and tax services. They focus on helping clients achieve their business and financial goals, from startup operation to long-term financial planning. For more information, call Terry Cantor or Dan Pike at 215-550-2954 or on the web at cnbpcpas.com.
Are you looking for a family-friendly fitness center in the heart of Bucks County? Spring Mill Athletic Club has programs and activities to offer the whole family for every age and season. Group classes, personal training, dance academy, summer camp, and more can be found at this non-intimidating environment. Come tour Spring Mill Athletic Club today and get a free 1-week trial membership. Visit us at springmillathletic.com for more information.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, welcome back. This week in pro football, Pat Callahan here on JAKIB Sports, joining you to talk about week number 14 in the National Football League. You know, I'm looking at myself here. Pat Leonard joining me here from the New York Daily News. You know, Pat, I'm getting a little concerned here that I'm starting to look more and more like Andy Reid. And it has me a little unnerved. I think after this Christmas season, if I keep eating, I tell you, they're going to consider us separated at birth.
Nah, you look great, Pat. That's how I felt though on Thanksgiving Day in Jerry World in Dallas.
Let me know when you get over 30. You can we can then commiserate with each other. But Pat, great to have you joining me here. And you have a podcast going too. Do I have that right? The Talking Ball, is that right?
Yes, Talking Ball. We do talk Giants, but it's a league-wide podcast. So guests from players, current and former, executives, agents, etc., experts like our mutual friend Sal Palantonio. He's on this week's pod. So yeah, thanks for plugging.
All right, appreciate that. And they can find that. Where do they find it? I'm the Fred Flintstone of social media now. So they can find that anywhere.
So it's on anywhere you get your podcast, and also on my YouTube channel, which is PL on NFL.
All right, well done. All right, Pat, let's start talking here about the Eagles and the Giants on Sunday, and we'll start with this late-breaking thing here that I saw on Pro Football Talk, which is that Saquon Barkley added to the injury list today with a neck injury. What do you know about it?
Well, it's not going to keep him from playing, but it was alarming to me. We did talk to Saquon today. He's in the locker room. He's getting treatment frequently on the right shoulder. He injured, Pat, in early October against the Green Bay Packers in London, but he hasn't been on the injury report since mid-October when they played the Jacksonville Jaguars. What's interesting about this, Pat, is a couple of things. Number one, the Giants win with running game and good defense. And in their recent skid, they haven't been able to run the ball. Secondly, against Washington last week in their 2020 tie, there were a couple plays. And now Saquon's a tough guy. He plays through a lot. There were a couple plays where it looked like he was avoiding some contact and, and stepping out of bounds, et cetera. So I'm not suggesting that he doesn't want to take a hit. I'm suggesting that his body is worn down from the workload he's had. And why this is important for the Giants going into this game is because if they can't control the ball and keep the ball off the Eagles side and away from Jalen Hurts, they really just don't have a shot.
Yeah, I agree. You know, just as an aside, Pat, the NFL always was very vigilant about its injury lists in years past. And if you neglected to put somebody on that injury list, you face some serious fines. But just thinking back to last year with Ezekiel Elliott, who apparently had a knee injury almost the whole year, but was almost never on the injury list. And now you're talking about Saquon. Is the NFL starting to let teams get away with that and hide these injuries like the NHL, upper body, lower body?
That's a good question, especially because I'm glad you asked that, because Saquon's injury now is not the shoulder. It's listed as a neck injury. Right. What's weird about that is that they have about 5 guys right now listed with neck injuries. Now Saquon's the next one. Yeah. It's unclear exactly what that is categorizing and what is all encompassed beneath that and within that designation. But certainly, I think it would be accurate to tell NFL fans that just because a guy isn't on a report doesn't mean he's not hurt. That's for sure.
Fair to say. All right, the Giants 1-3-1, Pat, in their last 5. The one win against the Houston Texans, who are barely an NFL team. Can this team right the ship now with the schedule getting tougher for the Giants? They got Philadelphia twice. They got another one with Washington. It's not going to get any easier for Big Blue.
I personally worry about whether they can. They are the only team. This is actually Sal Pal's stat. They're the only team currently in the playoffs that doesn't have a win in their own division. In their recent 1-3-1 skid, they've dropped from averaging 173 yards per game rushing in their 7-1 start, or 6-1 start, I should say, to 116 yards rushing in this recent skid. If they lose to the Eagles, win or lose this game, their game the following week on Sunday Night Football at Washington probably is for a playoff spot still.
Right.
So whoever wins that game is sitting pretty. It's also an unanswered question right now, what's going to happen in their last game against the Eagles of the season. Because if the Eagles have that wrapped up and they sit a bunch of starters, maybe the Giants get a win against some backups and can sneak in that way. So that's still a possibility.
I wonder, Pat, if the Giants, and I'm going off the rails here, but I'm just thinking, I wonder if somebody in the Giants brain trust is thinking, boy, oh boy, should we just play backups in this game Sunday? We're not going to beat this team, lose, and then just get everybody as healthy as we can for that Sunday night game against Washington.
You know what? They have some guys. So Leonard Williams, who has been a DNP for a couple of days on their defensive line with a neck. They also have some guys. Now he's been playing, but he could be held out of this game with an eye on being ready for Washington. There's also some guys on the injured list, like Ben Bredesen, their left guard, who's been out really since, I believe, for the last 5 games, and also Adoree Jackson, their top corner. These could be decisions that get pushed down the road to that Washington game, exactly like you're saying, for that reason.
About that, yeah. The Giants right now, it's a tough road for New York. And here they face a team Sunday that is just playing such downhill football, Pat. Here's a couple stats to him. I sound like Sal now, but these are courtesy. I should say that. These are courtesy of him. He feeds me all these great stats, analytic type stats. Pass block win rate. Lane Johnson's first in terms of offensive tackles. Landon Dickerson, the offensive guard, he's third in pass block win rate. Jordan Mailata, run block win rate, he's third. Jason Kelsey, fifth in center. This is an offensive line that is just so far has avoided major injury and is just dominant. How do the Giants win enough against this offensive line to compete Sunday?
Yeah, I actually asked Azeez Ojulari, the Giants edge rusher, this exact question, and he just played a terrific game against Washington. He's been hurt essentially all year with calf injuries. He comes back and he was their best pass rusher, probably their best outside rusher in any single game this year in the tie against the Commanders.
Right.
So I asked him, what do you do against this Eagles offensive line and against Jalen Hurts? You probably have to contain him as a runner, right? And he said that you can't just do that, because if you just contain him as a runner, he's proven now he's going to cut people up from the pocket and you're not going to get to him past this offensive front. So you have to pin your ears back and go, and you just have to be aware. But Pat, the thing is, you just listed all those great stats about just because you're pinning your ears back doesn't mean you're going to get there either. And so the Giants number 5 overall pick, Kayvon Thibodeau, has proven that this season, if the games are close late, he does have a knack for making the big play in the big moment. But he has not been making plays consistently throughout games. So they have to try to keep it close. And as you know, the Eagles lead the league in turnover margin and in takeaways by a defense. So the recipe is for the Giants to protect the ball, but that's going to be really hard against the Eagles D too.
Yeah. And now let's talking about Daniel Jones. I've been down on Daniel Jones. I know you know Gary Myers. Well, Gary continues to defend him, saying that he doesn't have any weapons at receiver, and that's a fact. But it struck me, though, Pat, that in terms of, again, more stats from Sal, most times these are quarterbacks contacted while running or throwing in a given game. Jones, 13.5 times a game. Jalen Hurts is right behind him, 13.3. But obviously there's a qualitative difference between these two guys getting contacted.
Yeah.
Is Jones, the Giants setting Jones up to fail, having him run as much as he is, but meanwhile, the passing game just can't succeed the way they're doing it right now.
No, yeah. Interestingly enough, the running game has actually enhanced what he's been able to do this year. Now, what he has done better this year than previous years is protect the ball. He's only averaging 0.5 turnovers per game compared to the last 3 years. The first 3 years of his career, he was averaging more than 1 per game in all 3 seasons. The strange part, or the difference now in the recent games, is he's turned the ball over now 3 times in the last 4 games. 2 interceptions against the Lions, and then something he really hasn't done much of, Pat, against Washington on the first drive, running out in the open field, he fumbles. If he does that, they can't win. I agree with Gary Myers in the sense that Daniel is not the reason this team is losing. But Pat, I will say this. The coaching staff on the offensive side, Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka, they call plays and coach situations in a way that indicates they are protecting Jones from himself and not trusting him.
I think you're right about that. I think they certainly, and I see it inside the red zone, they're not going to put the ball in his hands in terms as a passer. They're going to put it maybe in his hands as a rusher to with a run, like an option, a read option. But you're right about that. I don't think they trust him. And maybe it's because they don't have the wide receiver. All right, Pat, we got a few minutes left. I just wanted to get your take on the Dallas Cowboys, the other team in the NFC East. Dallas appears to really now have hit its stride, just buried an Indianapolis team that I thought embarrassed itself in the fourth quarter Sunday night. But tell me what you think of this Cowboy team and how formidable you think they're going to be down the stretch.
I think they're an excellent team. They are, like we always talk in New York about the Giants roster not being good enough. And the Cowboys, like the Eagles, are a team that you just look all over their roster and you see either stars or just solid players that you say, man, I wish I had one of those guys in my secondary or on my line or wherever it is. Yeah. And I think their receivers have turned it up a little bit in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if the Odell Beckham recruitment has had anything to do with that. The one concern I would have if I were a Cowboys fan, and the one thing that would excite me if I was an Eagles fan, is I still look at them and the amount of penalties they accrue in games. Yeah. We saw it on Thanksgiving against the Giants. It was something like 11, including 8 in the first half or something like that. And Mike McCarthy's game management, I still don't trust them in a one and done playoff game, given those things and that poor management. But I think from an Eagles perspective, they are forcing the Eagles to keep their foot on the gas. Not that they wouldn't, but clearly the division and even the conference are not decided yet. And a major reason is because their defense and that Cowboys team, like you said, is rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Cowboys are going to be a tough fight. I think they're the second best team in the NFC right now. The NFC East, well, I tell you, it's really acquitted itself extremely well. But Pat, I think you're right. I think that game next Sunday night is going to be for one of those playoff spots. I don't think both the Giants and the Commanders make it, and I think it's going to be a tough out for the Giants to get in there. But listen, I appreciate you very much joining me. Give everybody that podcast again so everybody can find you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's Talking Ball with Pat Leonard. It's a weekly podcast, usually published around Wednesdays. We have a YouTube channel with full video of the entire podcast, including our guests, and then you can find it wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Pods, etc. The YouTube tag is PL on NFL. Thanks again for having me on and letting me plug that.
It was great. It was great having you on, and appreciate it very much. And we got a number of weeks left in the season, Pat. I definitely want to have you back to talk about as the NFC East continues to shape up, or and the playoff roles start to solidify. It'd be great to pick your brain again. So thanks very much for joining me.
I would love it. Say the word. I'm back.
All right, great. Pat Leonard joining me from the New York Daily News and from his podcast. Please, everybody, check it out on YouTube. All right, when we get back, Dave Glockner substituting for my arch nemesis, Tony Cotillo. Dave's going to join us. We're going to talk some fantasy football. Everybody getting into the playoffs right now. And we'll see if we can maybe give you a little boost. That's next on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble a most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at whistlerpearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. whistlerpearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
All right, welcome back to This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you week number 14 in the National Football League. Later on, we still have Sean Green joining us and Gary Myers. We'll wrap up the show as we talk about some of the NFL teams that have gone up, some prominent NFL teams that have gone up in smoke in 2022, and more talk about the battle that is the NFC East. But for right now, we're going to talk some fantasy football. We're going to do it with Dave Glockner from Win Daily Sports. Dave subbing. I guess Cotillo's at another probation hearing or somewhere else, weapons charge or whatever it is. But Dave, thanks for filling in, pal.
Hey, Pat, I'm glad to save the show in this segment, let's say, for one of these weeks for Tony. I know it's something weird going on, but I'm here to save the day. So I'm excited to talk to you.
Appreciate you stepping in there, David. We have a number of things that I'd like to go through with you. So let's get started right away. The Dallas playing, those tough Houston Texans this week at Dallas. Dallas is a 16.5-point favorite in the game. David, is there any reason not to start both Cowboy running backs this week?
If you could, no, there's no reason not to start both. It's been actually you would want one to play the whole time, but they've been so good together that you can't avoid either. If you look at it since week 7, since Dak's come back, right? Pollard's averaged 24 fantasy points. Elliott's averaged 17.5 combined during the 30s, and Houston has not let up a game this year under 20 fantasy points, except for one rare time when Mike McDaniel decided to pass 37 times in the first half with Tua. But other than that, you can run against the Texans all day.
Yeah, the Cowboys' run game has really started to pick up now. Elliott has like 7 touchdowns his last 5 games. He's TD dependent, but he is scoring them. They get inside the 5-yard line. He's almost a lock for a touchdown. Meanwhile, Pollard keeps breaking off these 30-yard touchdown runs or screen passes. So I definitely think it's worth playing. It's worth really, David, playing any Cowboy, I guess you've got in your lineup would be a good get for Sunday, right?
It is true. I mean, anytime you face the Houston Texans, you start a running back. It's just in the script, especially in 2022. But the Cowboys this week, I think both running backs are in play, and you're not going to be wrong going with someone like CeeDee Lamb and mixing in some Dalton Schultz because of the Cowboys' prolific offense right now, averaging almost 40 points a game the past 5. So it's worth starting almost any Cowboy, like you said. Even Gallup will get some good touches here.
Yeah. And boy, here's a name, Dave, I didn't think 14 weeks in that I would be asking you about, and that is Jared the Goff, who all of a sudden the Detroit Lions, they're a very pedestrian 5-7, but boy, that offense is stoked right now. They've got 2 running backs who appear to be both fantasy plays, but tell me what you think about Goff himself, and would you believe they're a 2.5-point favorite against the 10-2 Minnesota team? Minnesota's defense, not that great. Are you starting Jared Goff this weekend?
Yeah, I'm trying to get involved in this game heavily. So Goff is in play for me, especially in DFS formats. He's very cheap, still under $6K on DraftKings. So in DFS, yes, and even in your daily fantasy football or your year long, I should say, I would start him as well. Now I don't know if he's going to be that kind of go-to starter the rest of the way for you.
Yeah.
He's still 16th in the league in scoring at quarterback position, but the last 2 weeks have shown some light. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is back and healthy. I think that's when his game rises. So love the game this week. I actually like them to beat the Vikings as well. I think that's a good game environment for them.
I think that's going to it has the potential to be a high scoring game. And that's where you'd like a Goff. And you never know when Kirk Cousins is going to rise from the crypt and have one of those type games too. So I think Goff is maybe a pretty good play for this week. If you got it. You heard, I don't know if you were, we had Pat Leonard on just a minute ago, David, and he's talking about Saquon now, neck injury. I have Saquon in both my leagues, and I'm thinking of sitting him in the one. Give me your thoughts on him and whether with this neck injury and just the fact that they're playing Philadelphia and the Giants offense still has training wheels on it. Would you think about benching him?
I would. I'm with you. I drafted Saquon. I think we slapped virtual high fives in one of the last shows on our drafting ability of getting Saquon, but you're starting to see the wear and tear really, come about on Saquon. I'm worried this week. We saw what the Eagles did when they committed to the run last week against Derrick Henry. I think, Daniel Jones isn't going to beat you. He's had some decent games against the Eagles, but mostly with his legs. I think they sell out again like they did last week, and they say, Danny beat us, and it's not going to happen, and it's going to slow down Saquon. If he even plays, it's questionable now. I'm with you. I would bench him even if he plays. If you can.
Got it. If he plays, yeah. Dave Glockner, presented by the great folks at Concrete Cutting Systems. David, give me some, if you got any jigsaw pieces here that Cotillo might have left you or your own. Your own would be better. To hell with what Cotillo did.
Yeah, I'll come up with a name.
We need a different name than jigsaw pieces when you're on. But give me a couple of names of guys, be it DFS. But also, I want you to concentrate, too, though, on the playoffs. You got a lot of people in playoffs who'll be watching the show. And if there's any names that you're interested in that might be good plays besides the ones we talked about, and in particular in that Eagle-Giant game.
Yeah, Eagle-Giant game. I mean, listen, the Giants have started to fade on both aspects of their defense. Last 3 games against the run, they've allowed 165 yards a game. And then if you look at the number 1 receivers against the Giants in the last 3 weeks, Terry McLaurin lit them up, 8 for 105. Then you had CeeDee Lamb, 8 for 106. And you had St. Brown before that, 7 for 76. So I would start a number 1 receiver from the Eagles. And it always gets twisted, right? Who is the number 1 each week? Because I think they kind of share that load.
Yeah, they do.
Last week we knew it was going to be AJ because it was – I really like that. I think Devontae has a huge game this week. I think AJ will still have his. I just think Devontae, it's his time.
You're right.
They kind of spread it. So any number 1, and the Eagles kind of have 2. So I like Devontae this week.
The Eagles, I don't know if they consciously do it, but you're right. That is the way it seemingly works out. And then it'll be interesting to see, Dave, when Dallas Goedert is eligible to come off the IR after this game. So we'll see how they work him back in, because the Eagles have continued to flourish without a tight end, but they miss him, and they're going to be even more formidable when he gets himself back into the lineup. All right, anybody else strike you, David?
Yeah, I know we talked earlier about the Vikings-Lions game, and there's a guy, Cook, but I'm not going to talk Dalvin. Let's talk his brother, James, out in Buffalo, really started to take advantage of his opportunities and actually had the same amount of snaps as Devin Singletary last week, had more targets. I think there's a real potential here that James Cook takes over that backfield going into the playoffs. Now, it's a Buffalo backfield that you can never really trust because Josh Allen is the premier rusher on that team.
Right.
But if you're going into the playoffs and you still see James Cook out there, get him. Just stash him. See what you can do. It's also you're playing a little avoidance, too. You're taking him away from opponents. So I like James Cook under the radar. I think other people have talked about this, but Zonovan Knight really seems like Knight, I should say. Really seems like a guy that you could focus on and really actually plug into your lineups right away. 55% snap count last week. He's left James Robinson in the dust, 11%. The Michael Carter situation you got to keep an eye on, but I think it's his to lose right now. The Jets with Mike White look explosive. So those two I really like, Pat, from the backfield. I'll
tell you, David, one thing this season I think is really solidified is at the running back position. You're not going to see – I think you've seen your last big contract at the running back position in this league because guys get hurt and Zonovan Knight comes in and rushes for near 100 yards, or Raheem Mostert all of a sudden is playing really well. Jeff Wilson, guys that for years ago were playing for the 49ers are all of a sudden 1-2 in Miami. And I just think that Zeke Elliott type contract is the end of it. The teams now realize, I think, that running back is more or less a plug and play type position, and they're not going to invest in it.
I agree 100%. I mean, you even look, the biggest one is Derrick Henry now. And yes, you would say he's the best and deserves some money, but can you really win around that style of football? And I'm not sure. You're starting to see some cracks in that team.
I agree, Dave. The answer is no. That was proven last week. I mean, you're not going to win with that pounding, not the way the game is played today with all the flags occur when the ball's in the air. The only flag that happens when somebody's running it is a holding, and that goes against you. So, so I guess you're right. Well, listen, David, thanks a lot for filling in here. Tell everybody where they can follow you and track what you're doing here as far as fantasy football.
Yeah, Pat, as always, I enjoy it. A lot of stuff out there, but absolutely follow Heat Ratio Sports Network, where Tony and I run a team and podcast shows, and all talking about Philly 4 for 4 plus more. And also with Win Daily Sports, the hat here, have a lot of daily fantasy content as well as props for NBA, NFL, MLB when it's playing. So I'm active on both, and just would love a follow. So thanks for the time, Pat, and let's go.
All right, David, appreciate it very much. Thanks. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. All right, Dave Lackner joining me here to talk some fantasy football as you get ready for your playoffs. I hope everybody's in them, and you can ruin a couple more Sundays with your fantasy team, or maybe you're out of it and you can just enjoy watching football. When we get back, it's always enjoyable to talk to this guy who's Sean Green. Will join me from the Bet SGPN and the Sports Gambling Podcast. A lot of questions for Sean about that Sunday night game last week and about that Minnesota-Detroit game, and, of course, Eagles-Giants. We'll do that in just a minute on This Week in Pro Football.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com. Where do you tailgate when your team's away? Join Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill for their first ever Birds Tailgate Party on Sunday, September 25th, starting at noon under the tent. Enjoy a full tailgate buffet from only $26.95 per person, along with specials at the bar. Celebrate with friends cheering on our hometown team. Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill Athletic Club. Visit juddsdining.com for more details.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spent. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, thanks for joining me here this week in pro football. We got still a couple guys to bring on here, so please stay with me. We got Sean Green joining me in just a second, and Gary Myers at the bottom of the show. We're going to talk about the litany of teams, marquee teams, that have run aground in the National Football League this year. This guy never runs aground. That would be my close friend Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast, out there in Los Angeles, excited as hell to put Baker Mayfield right into his fantasy spot. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, the town is Rams fever. I did actually see a guy wearing a Rams shirt, and I go, what's that? Oh, yeah. You sometimes forget they have a team out here. But yeah.
I was there. I was there twice last year. I was there in October and when they played the Lions. And I'm telling you, I couldn't find anybody with a Rams shirt on. Anybody. And they were playing, they were jockeying for a Super Bowl. Then when I was there for the Super Bowl, I saw a few of them.
Couple, yeah,
but still not as many as Dodgers or Lakers or whatever, But anyway, Rams and Raiders, Thursday night football. But there'll be more Raider fans in the stands than Ram fans, of course. But all right, Sean, let's talk about a couple other things. First off, let me go back. Just get your take on the Sunday night football game. The Cowboys 21-19 over the Colts with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. And I knew Dallas was going to win. So Dallas scores a defensive score. Now that they've got it finished. I wake up the next morning, 54-19. Give me your thoughts on that, the Colts in that fourth quarter. And also, how do you, in terms of the prognostications you make, take into account what teams might be tanking it in the last fifth of the season?
Yeah, it is a little hard in the NFL because the NFL, these guys, it's such a physical game. It's not like the NBA where it's a little easier to tank. You can just do it with a lineup, and these guys are playing for their lives. They're trying to get good tape out there. So it's a very nuanced thing to tank in the NFL. The Texans certainly feel like they're tanking, but then they just switched. They just brought Davis Mills back in. Kyle Allen was obviously worse. If you're really trying to tank, I think you would keep Kyle Allen out there. And yeah, to your point, the Colts, I don't think they were trying to tank. I think they just really were that bad. I mean, if they wanted to tank, I think they would put Sam Ehlinger back out there, who clearly wasn't ready in those couple games. I mean, they had Matt Ryan, and it kind of was a game there for a little bit. I think just once that one defensive touchdown happened, it just unraveled for them. So I think teams are kind of doing it quietly. I think, like the Falcons, them putting in Desmond Ridder after the bye week, that to me is a sign that they're okay not winning right now. And to me, it's like they're kind of getting out of the AFC South race, which they still kind of have a shot at. So that to me is a sign that they're tanking.
Well, I guess tanking, Sean, may not be the word. Maybe I should use. Maybe in the case of the Colts, I think you're right. But I think the team almost quit, and because they
Yeah.
realized the game was over. But you don't know how to predict who's going to be doing that. Certainly, I guess sometimes, Sean, I guess you could look at the coaches right now. Lovie Smith, if he's interested in coaching any longer, he's not going to tank because he's trying to save his job. A guy like Sean McVay, he's got his job, so he can look at younger guys and not worry about it. And I guess that's a factor too, right?
No, you're right. And it's weird because the NFL, it's again kind of comparing it to the NBA. It's not like they have designated rest or that kind of stuff. Usually you expect these guys to be going all out, but within that, you can find motivation edges. A la last week we saw with AJ Brown. AJ Brown was obviously very particularly motivated for that Titans game. You know, he's been pretty motivated all season, but clearly that meant a little extra. And I think finding those spots in the NFL can help you with the handicap. And I mean, even last week with your Rams, they didn't get the win, but they got the cover. Bobby Wagner was very motivated.
Wagner, he's played terrific.
Yeah, he was playing lights out against his former team. So even within those, like, if you can find a couple guys that are really motivated, find those motivation edges do make a difference.
Boy, Detroit looking at possibly, Sean, a top 5 pick in that Matthew Stafford deal. But all right, that's enough about that. That is enough. Let me hit you with a couple other things. Eagles at New York this week, play the Giants. I'm curious if there's any Jalen Hurts props. I think the guy is clearly headed for MVP, but I'd imagine all his prop numbers keep rising, Sean, each week.
You know, Jalen Hurts and just his prop bets in particular are kind of a tough bet because some weeks you see like what you saw against the Green Bay Packers, where he runs for 150 yards and didn't throw for that many yards. Or some weeks you see like the Titans, where he throws for a ton and doesn't. To me, the safe prop bet is Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, for him to get that rushing touchdown, because he is their goal line back. He has an ability to break a play if he's near the 5-yard line. If they get it down to the 1, they're just going to run that quarterback sneak. I mean, you can get that at like plus 110, plus 125. So Jalen Hurts just to score a touchdown on the ground, that to me is like the safest one because, depending on how the game goes, you're covered.
All right. Sean Green, presented by the great folks at UGI. All right, Sean, I asked you to look up something else too, because I think now it's shaping up in the AFC, Sean, between 3 teams: Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Buffalo. Buffalo's been on its heels a little bit. Josh Allen's play has leveled off. I'm not sure the Chiefs are as fully loaded as they should be, especially at the wide receiver position. The Bengals are starting to look a little more formidable. Tell me what you think of that AFC, and what are the odds makers saying as far as who's coming out of that conference?
Yeah, I mean, right now, it is a tight race. Cincinnati isn't getting the kind of respect you would imagine, because it's weird. Like, they just seem to own Patrick Mahomes. They're 3-0 against Patrick Mahomes, and they just kind of figure out how to beat him. To me, it's really going to come down to who wins. Who gets the home field advantages. As obvious as it sounds, I think that's going to be the favorite. Chiefs are right up there, then the Bills, then the Bengals. So I think the Bengals have a pretty decent value here because they've shown the ability to go on the road and win big playoff games. If you're looking for like a bet right now, Bengals to win the AFC, I think is a pretty fun one to get down on.
All right. Just double cover 87. You want to beat the Chiefs, double cover 87. It's really not rocket science. You know what I mean?
No, especially with now, with no Tyreek Hill. It goes Buffalo at plus 175, Chiefs plus 250, Bengals at plus 650 is one I definitely like.
That's unbelievable. Really, that huge a spread between Buffalo and Cincinnati. That's really shocking.
Well,
I think Cincinnati's the best team of the 3, tell you the truth, Sean.
No, 100%. And just what we've seen out of Joe Burrow, we saw them go on a late run with him playing really well in November, December, and then it ran into the playoffs. And this year it seems like the same thing. They got off to a little bit of a rough start, but now Chase is healthy. He just has that swagger back there, and it's really tough to bet against him. And I don't. I like the Bengals last week. I liked him this week, and he really has another gear, him and this team.
I know. Now, I mentioned to you last week that I was surprised on some websites that the 49ers had passed the Eagles in terms of NFC prop bets for the NFC Championship. That cannot be the same now. Jimmy G is a middling quarterback anyway, but he was well suited to as a caretaker for that offense. Now it's Brock Purdy. I imagine the Eagles are right now far and away the favorite in the NFC. Is that right?
Yeah, Eagles are plus 125 to win the NFC. Then it's the Cowboys at plus 160. And then it is the 49ers at plus 500. No one's given any love to the Minnesota Vikings.
I know.
They just get no respect. And it's a lot of these like power rankings and statistical models. Like the Minnesota Vikings are like, every week it's like they're the worst 8-2 team. They're the worst 9-2 team. They're the worst 10-2 team. At some point, they just might be a good team.
Yeah. I guess it eventually could be. They're the worst Super Bowl champion ever. I guess what you're going to end up hearing. Minnesota, Sean, a 2.5-point dog at 5-7 Detroit. How surprised are you by that number?
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I understand it. So a lot of these sports books, what they're doing is their power rankings, right? So in one of the huge metrics is net yards per play, meaning like, hey, what is your average yard per play on offense? What's your average yards per play on defense? Minnesota's 30th in the league. So when you have that bad of net yards per play and you're going on the road against Detroit, who has a much better net yards per play, they almost just have to end up getting there. They opened Minnesota as a -3 favorite. That was them like manually adjusting it. And then everyone bet the Lions.
Wow.
And now it's Lions -2.5, -2. Yeah.
That's a big switch, but it's funny. You're right about that. What you said, the Vikings are without a doubt, the most disrespected 10-2 team in sports history. All right. So, but it'll be fun. Obviously, I think it's gonna be a high scoring game, that game on Sunday. All right, Sean, give me a few picks this week. I want everyone to get to this sports gambling podcast website because it's really loaded, stacked, and Sean's got some locks. You can see it. He's got the little lock right next to the ones that he likes. And you can also check out your referee assignments.
Oh yeah,
it's
a fun article.
That's great. So, all right, who's on your like list this week?
So I really like the Miami Dolphins -3, -120 against this Chargers defense that can just not stop anything. So you have Miami coming off a loss. This is a nice bounce back spot against them. And Tua, I've been critical of Tua over the years and didn't think he was that good, but that 49ers defense is really, really good. They can make a lot of quarterbacks look bad. Yeah. This Chargers defense, they got no one. It's Derwin James, Khalil Mack, and a bunch of nobodies in that SoFi Stadium, which is kind of like a dome. I think they're going to be able to really run up the score, really move the ball against the Chargers defense. Other game I like is which I really like, is the Jets getting 10 points.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's a big number, isn't it?
Yeah.
You talk about disrespecting. Jets are 7-5.
Jets are 7-5. They have an elite cornerback, even though he's a rookie. Sauce Gardner is playing at a very high level, and they're noticeably better than they were with Zach Wilson. Mike White, the team seems to be rallying around him. He knows how to run the offense. I get it's a revenge spot for the Bills. They haven't played at home in a while, but 10 points for a division game, I think is a little too much here. So I like the Jets catching the big number there.
Yeah, I think so. Who knows? I don't know what the weather's going to be. Who knows up there? But I think that's just a matter, Sean. One of these games, I think Buffalo is going to rediscover what they were doing early in the season. It's just a matter of when that happens, but no sign of it right now. All right, is there anything else that grabs your attention here?
Yeah, I mean, I know we just talked about it, but I'm going to take Minnesota, the Minnesota Vikings getting the points. It's like this thing where everyone's overthinking it.
Yeah,
I'm not taking Jared Goff as a favorite. I understand they're a much better team when they have a healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown, but this Vikings team, we see this every year. There's always one team that wins a ton of close games, and you almost look to fade them the next year because it's like you can't win 6-7 one-score games. It eventually catches up to you. But I think this Vikings team is that team this year that just figures out ways to win one score and close games, and I expect this to be close. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen against these Lions quarterbacks, and it's a revenge spot for TJ Hawkinson. So a lot going for the Vikings. I think they can win.
All right, that makes total sense to me too. I just don't know if Detroit has won 3 straight, but I don't know if they're ready for this kind of prime time yet. So, but anyway, should be, like I said, should be an interesting game. All right, Sean, where does everybody find you? What are you working on now? And are you done with your World Cup fever, please? Can we get you back to the American version of football?
Oh yeah. I never left. You know, we give everyone a little bit of everything for the gambling folks there. Like I said, it was fun soccer. I'll see you in 4 years. But,
Okay.
you know, we're picking every NFL game against the spread. We just did some college football plays as well for Army, Navy, and the FCS playoffs. We do a whole episode just dedicated towards props we like. So you can get it all. Sports Gambling Podcast. You know, wherever you listen to your podcast, put us in there. Can't miss us.
All right, Sean Green. I appreciate it very much. I know you want to head home. Rams, Raiders. You'll be all excited. I know you'll take that hat off and put your other hat on.
Put my Rams horns on.
Yes, that's right. And you better get there early because you know it's going to be sold out. You know that.
It's going to be, it's going to be jam-packed.
All right, Sean, thanks very much for joining me. Appreciate it, pal.
Take it easy, Pat.
All right, great Sean Green from the Sports Gambling Podcast. Please check him out, BetSGPN. Excellent job they all do over there. All right, when we get back, the Hall of Famer himself, Gary Myers, is going to join me. We're going to take a spin around the National Football League. We're going to look at some teams that have been terrible, marquee teams that have been some terrible disappointments. And, of course, we'll talk both Eagles, Giants, and we'll take maybe a little closer look at that Jets-Bills game when we get back on This Week in Pro Football.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
For the team at Cordasco Financial Network, a part of Mercer Advisors, financial planning is about more than just managing your money. They guide you in making retirement, tax, insurance, and estate planning decisions by creating a plan based entirely on your individual needs. Plus, Cordasco Financial Network professionals work one-on-one with business owners in creating and managing company 401k plans, IRAs, and defined benefit plans. They can help you maximize plan efficiency, ensure full regulatory compliance, and optimize tax obligations. Call 855-558-3500 or click the link in the description below to learn more. Let their team help you secure your future. 855-558-3500. Cordasco Financial Network is a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Andrew Garrett Incorporated, which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors. Client experiences vary. Successful outcomes not guaranteed.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, back to wrap up week number 14 of This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. And who better to do it with than the Hall of Fame elector himself and the prolific author of numerous books, including Brady versus Manning Coaching Confidential, which I just got this week, Gary. How about them Cowboys in the Catch? Great Christmas gifts, by the way. If you just look this guy up, there's all kinds of books that the football fan in your family would want to have, and that's Gary Myers. Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pat. How you doing tonight?
All right, Gary. I got 1,000 things I want to talk to you about here as we wrap up or get ready for Week 14. But let me start with this. Just give me a quick take. We've been talking Eagles Giants throughout this program. Talking about the news breaking about Saquon Barkley getting added to the injury list. Do the Giants have any real chance of winning this game?
I can't really see it. I don't see how they can score with the Eagles on Sunday. I mean, even with a healthy Saquon, they've been struggling to put points up. And defensively, they're missing their two corners. Xavier McKinney, the safety, has been out with an injury he suffered during the bye week in Mexico. As we've been talking about all season, Pat, they have no wide receivers on this team. I think this could be a really one-sided game.
Yeah.
And with all we know that the Eagles fans are going to take the trip up the turnpike.
Yeah.
So I expect that to be a lot of support and a lot of green in that stadium on Sunday for the Eagles.
I had posited, Gary, earlier in the show that the Giants, I wonder if it might creep into their heads in the Giant Brain Trust to just forget this game and just get everybody as healthy as possible for what could be a play-in game next week in Washington.
Boy, you'd have a hard time getting coaches to agree to do that. I don't even know who they would, really sit to rest up for the Washington game next week, unless you're talking about Barkley, because
it's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. The way they're pretty much, playing everybody right now who's healthy.
Right.
They don't have, very many players left who you feel you can be even slightly competitive with. And they would never do that at a home game. And teams would never admit going in that they don't have a chance to win. So unlike the Eagles a few years ago.
I know. That Sunday night game. I know. All right, just a quick take, Gary, on Jets and Bills. The Jets, they're fighting everybody. I give them tremendous credit. Their effort even last week. They almost pulled that game out. And now they go to Buffalo. They're a 10-point dog. The odds makers still not believing in them. Do you give the Jets a puncher's chance here?
I do. They're a completely different team with Mike White at quarterback. They've just show this energy about them. This could sound silly. They just seem to be a happier team now.
Yeah.
That they were so dragged down by Zach Wilson's ineptness that I think it really affected the mentality of the team and the way they were. You can just see it in the body language with the receivers when Wilson was playing. They should have beaten the Vikings. I mean, they were down 20-3.
I was just going to say that. They should have won that game. You're right.
Yeah, they should have. They were down 20-3, like I said, Pat. And they not only did they fight their way back into the game, but they had so many opportunities in the red zone in the fourth quarter, and they just couldn't make the play. They could, Braxton Berrios dropped what could have been the game-winning touchdown.
That's correct.
It would have been a tough catch, but you got to make that catch.
Got to make him as right. You got to make him as right. And the tradition of Wayne Corbett could have made it right there. But
that's right.
All right, Gary, let's move it along here because, like I said, I got a big agenda for you here.
Okay.
Gary, we've been talking on and off all season long about how certain teams have just crashed. Certain marquee teams have crashed. Yeah. And what I want to do is I want to just hit you with a few team names and tell me if you think has the window closed on these teams for what I mean is the next few years, and it's time for them to start over. Let me start. Obviously, the Super Bowl champion Rams 3-9. They have started over, but that team doesn't look that good anymore.
Well, it's amazing what happens when you have to play with a quarterback all season who's banged up and is not effective. By the time they lost Cooper Kupp, I mean, their season was pretty much down the drain anyhow. But they've had a lot of injuries. Losing Von Miller was a big deal for them. Not getting OBJ back at any point this season, and now it doesn't appear he'll ever be back there.
No.
Although I wouldn't totally count them out now. Because it doesn't appear he's going to be able to play until next season.
Right.
It opens the whole thing wide open again.
Exactly right.
I would say they're totally starting over if Sean McVay after this year says, I had all these TV offers.
Yeah.
Last year, I wanted to see if we can go back to back.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it. I gave it my best shot. Now I need to take a break from this.
Right.
And I don't know that that's going to happen, but that would signal to me a complete rebuild. If not, the Rams have not been shy. They don't have any draft picks, I don't think, until
still don't have a number one next year. Detroit has it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's going to be a great pick.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of the picks that were traded, next year's picks that were traded, including the Eagles pick from with the Eagles.
From I guess Miami. Well, no, not Miami. No, Saints. The Saints.
The Saints, of course, yeah, because they traded the 2 1s for. Yeah, I mean that's going to be a great pick.
It's going to be a great pick.
I think there's 4 picks in the top 10.
Yeah,
that won't belong to the team that.
How about that? Well, so let's segue there. The Saints, after just an excruciatingly bad loss on Monday night, Gary,
and would have been an excruciating bad game up until the last.
I tell you, so many bad football games, but the Saints just don't. They just look like. Let's combine a couple teams for brevity's sake. Teams that I think are similar. The Saints in the NFC were supposed to compete. The Denver Broncos might be the league's single most disappointing team, given the air of expectation when they traded for Russell Wilson. Just give me a quick take on both those teams and whether they have to think about starting over.
Well, the Saints' biggest problem is they just don't have a quarterback. Andy Dalton, with his 4th team in 4 years, has just become, a guy to fill in the gap until a team can find a new player or an injured player comes back. So I think they still have a pretty good defense, Pat. And I mean, Alvin Kamara is not the same player anymore, but they've been without Michael Thomas. Chris Olave looks like he's going to be a great player.
Yeah,
typical of the Ohio State receivers. I think the fact that they don't have their number 1 pick next year really hurts them.
Yeah.
So in terms of starting over, I wouldn't put them in the category of a complete rebuild because I think their defense is pretty good. As far as the Broncos are concerned, I mean, that's the team that you don't see how they're going to work their way out of this. They gave up so many high picks.
I know.
I mean, that was almost a Herschel Walker trade.
Yeah. Look at Seattle now. You mentioned about the Eagles having that Saints pick.
Yeah.
Seattle is going to be sitting there looking at that Denver pick. You're right.
Exactly right. And I mean, they're locked into Russell Wilson financially now.
Oh, my God. Are they ever? They are lock, stock, barrel with Russell Wilson.
Now, here's the thing I'll say is that Nathaniel Hackett was hired and Russell Wilson was signed prior to the new ownership taking over there. And we don't know what their appetite is right now or what their patience is in saying, okay, we got to get our feet on the ground, really get a good feel for what's going on here. We're going to go status quo into 2023.
Right.
Or are they going to say, all this stuff happened before we signed off on it?
Right.
We're just going to start over. Now, the salary cap hit on Russell Wilson is prohibitive.
That is.
So perhaps there's a way you pay part of his salary and get rid of him.
Oh, my God. That's a big part. Even if it's a part, Gary, that is a huge number. It's a 9-figure number for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to him, Pat. I mean, we don't get to see a lot of the Seahawks games, a year ago, but there had to be some signs.
Oh, you're right.
Major loss of skill set.
Yeah. It's really been shocking. You're right. It's been shocking. And
I've never seen anything like this, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one other team I want to throw out at you, Gary, which has not really been written off because they've been the beneficiary of 2 gift wins, and that's Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Saints just handed them that game Monday night, and you recall a few weeks ago, the Rams gift wrapped them.
Yeah, very similar.
That's right. Very similar on the same exact field. Tampa looks, to me, clearly injured. They're going to make the playoffs, but they look clearly injured, and that team seems to be aging pretty well too, Gary.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem there, Pat, really is their offensive line can't protect Brady. And when you have a 45-year-old guy back there who's never been mobile, the only way you can win is to protect him. And they've had so many. I mean, they had a retirement. Then Jensen got hurt, I think, like in the first day of training camp.
Yeah.
They lost some free agents. It's almost a completely different offensive line. And Tristan Wirfs got hurt last week.
Yeah.
that it's a completely different offensive line than we had in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and even last year.
Yeah.
So they have to rebuild that part of it. But you're right. I mean, it does look like a team that's got old together all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know. Tampa, and then they go out to San Francisco this week. Brady he'll be chucking that ball into the ground half the game Sunday.
You know, Pat, I looked this up today. Of Tampa's 12 games, Brady has thrown 40 or more passes 9 times.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I know it's a pass-happy league now.
Yeah,
But, I mean, his arm's going to fall off.
Yeah, that's pass unhappy. I don't think Tom is he's happy about that whatsoever.
No, I mean, there's no running game. Fournette just came back last week, and, he had like 50 yards. So they got to get him going again if he's got anything left in the tank.
All right. Talking with the great Gary Myers here, the Hall of Fame elector and the prolific author, and of course and you got another book coming out. This book is about the Giants, right? And
it's about the '86 Giants and their life after football.
Right. And
so,
what's the timeline for that one? People are ready to pre-order it, Gary, or what?
It's not quite reached that point, Pat. It doesn't come out till next September, so probably sometime in the spring people can order it. It's called Once a Giant, and really just some amazing stories about what players go through physically, emotionally, financially in their post-football life.
We'll try and pump it here in the Philadelphia area, Gary. But I'm not making any promises. All right.
I know it's not an Eagles book, but it's really a book that could be about any team because it examines what's the most important issue for all these players. And that's what is their life going to be like?
That's right.
In their 50s and 60s. So although I chose to write about this team because it won a championship, it's just about the age group I wanted to write about, and I knew so many of the players already.
Yeah.
So I hit the ground running on the subject matter. Yeah. But I really think it should appeal to all people who are interested in football because it in effect it really tells the story of every team. Because this Giant team isn't anybody. They're not any different than the Eagles, from 1986. The players from that team.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Gary. We have a couple minutes left here, but I want to run one other thing by you, and that is, we're about almost getting close to 3/4 of the way through the season, and I wanted to get your take on first Coach of the Year. I identified 3 names, Coach of the Year, but is Nick Sirianni the prohibitive favorite in your opinion to be Coach of the Year?
Right. I have him. I drew up a list earlier today, and I do have him at the top of the list.
Right.
They've done just a great job. The coaching staff has done a great job.
Yeah.
Not only with their record, obviously, but developing Jalen Hurts. Because I'll admit, I was a non-believer. I didn't think he threw it well enough to win in this league, but clearly he's proved me wrong. Put some great receivers around him and a good enough running game. And, he's in the running for MVP. And certainly Sirianni right now, to me, is the clear choice for him from coaching the year.
But I had a couple other names. Let's see if these are the same as yours. My other ones were Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
But how about them? A 2.5-point dog. 10-2, a 2.5-point dog this week at Detroit. And then Mike McDaniel, the job he has done in Miami.
He definitely. And then, I'm not trying to be a homer by any means because that I'm not. But, the 2 New York coaches have got their teams playing meaningful games in December.
That's great.
Which
you're right.
We have not had in New York in 5 years. So the fact that both of them have reached that point is pretty good.
Good. All right. And how about hot seats here, Gary? I have 3 names on my hot seat. Now, usually there's a turnover, at least 5 NFL coaches a year.
Right.
I don't know about this year. I was looking at it, but I got 3 names identified here. I'm going to hit you with them. You tell me whether there's any chance they're going to be coaching next year in their same job. And that starts with Nathaniel Hackett. We talked about 3-9 Denver. Does he survive?
I can't see it. Not only is it the 3-9 record, but it's how they've gotten there. Terrible coaching decisions, especially in that opener in Seattle, trying to, I think it was like a 95-yard field goal, if I remember right. Instead of going for it
That's right.
on 4th and 5 with your brand new quarterback.
Oh my God. Yeah. Your brand new $500 million quarterback. Yeah, exactly.
Pat, it's just gotten worse.
I know.
He hired a game management coach. He changed who's calling the plays. It's been a mess.
Lovie Smith, by the time his season's over, his hair will have the same consistency as Tim Allen in the Santa Claus. He's turning white right in front of us, Gary. Is there any chance he's the coach of the Houston Texans next year?
But I can't see that one either. I mean, his beard is getting grayer.
I know it
by
is.
the minute, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a great looking beard, but
it is. It is.
I think it was black at the beginning of the season.
I know.
It's not Lovey's fault. I mean, that roster is.
I know. It's just totally.
That's a complete rebuild that's going on there right now with Nick Caserio. I mean, Lovey's one of those guys that can just steer the ship, and keep a professional, make the team look somewhat professional.
Right.
So he's like maybe a transition coach until they build up the roster. That's the way. That's the only way I see him really coming back next year, is because this really is not his fault.
And the last name I wanted to hit you with is Cliff Kingsbury. Just the Arizona, just to me, a nondescript, anonymous team out in the desert, having a terrible year, 4-8. Does Cliff Kingsbury survive into 2023?
No, I don't think he does. You've seen the yelling back and forth with Kyler Murray, and that was the reason they drafted Kyler Murray, is because of his relationship with Kingsbury. I want to throw one more name at you here, okay?
Yep.
And I've been on this guy almost from the beginning, and it's only his second year. Brandon Staley in
Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The king of going for it on fourth down inside his own 20-yard line, which cost him a playoff spot last year.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. They have a ton of talent on that team.
I agree.
I know they've had injuries.
Yeah.
Everybody's got injuries.
Right.
You can say in discussing any team's record, you can say, boy, they've had a lot of injuries.
I agree.
Every team. So
I agree.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
It's a reality in this league. That's why you try to build a roster that's guys can play from top to bottom. But I just don't think he might be a good coach Monday through Saturday. Sunday, I don't want him anywhere near a headset.
Can't win close games on Sunday. That's a fact. The Chargers, if that game is close, the Chargers are going to lose it. So I think you're right. You may find he has a very short tenure there. All right, Gary, listen, I've taken the 20. That segment just flew by like it always does when you're kind enough to join me. And I look forward to talking now. The season's everything's starting to come now into more focus, and we'll spend more time going around the league. And we'll see now how this NFC East shapes up. We'll keep talking about it, and I appreciate it.
And let's not forget about the two interim coaches, too, that are kind of hanging by a thread, Jeff Saturday and Steve Wilkes.
I don't even – Saturday is not – after that job Sunday night, there's just no way I think he made it.
33 points in the fourth quarter.
I know.
There's gonna be – we can sit here today and say, oh, I can't really find more than three guys who I think should be fired.
Yeah, you're right.
Every year there's 8 new coaches, and there'll be 8 new coaches again next year.
All right, Gary. Thanks a lot for the wisdom. I appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you next week. All right.
Okay, great, Pat. Thanks.
All right, great. Gary Myers joining me there. All right, I know I'm up against it. Xander, if you could just throw up real quick, we'll take a 10-second look at the schedule for Week 14. Again, there's not that many. I wouldn't say there's a lot of great games on the schedule for this week. The later games, especially Philadelphia and New York coming on at 1:00. Everybody be watching that game. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, always an entertaining game. Should be low scoring game there. Jets, Bills, we talked about. In the later games, Kansas City's going to kill Denver. Tampa Bay, San Francisco, but I think I don't like the Bucs. I think San Francisco, even with a third string quarterback, will win that game. Sunday night game now, Dolphins, Chargers. Gary was just talking about the Chargers. I think the Dolphins will win that one. And Monday night, New England at 4-8 Arizona. I'm sure you can sneak in some last-minute shopping there. All right, Xander, thank you very much. And thank you all for staying with me here through this episode of This Week in Pro Football. Please give me a follow at TWIPF Pat. Follow the network at JAKIB Sports on Twitter. And I appreciate you hanging out here. And I look forward to talking to you again next week on This Week in Pro Football.